So I just thought I'd begin by introducing our patient. She's very special to us in the UK. She's 77 years old, has a lot of comorbidities, starting to show her age a little bit, is a little frail. So we need to have a bit of an examination of her. And of course, I'm talking about the NHS, not Penny. And we've got the perfect person to do that. So Penny Dash, new chair of NHS England, originally trained as a junior doctor and worked in public health, I believe, as well, before going off and doing management consultancy, first with Boston Consulting Group and then with McKinsey for 20 years. So Penny has a huge range of experience to bring to this job. Penny, if I can ask you first an easy question. Diagnose for us, if you can, the problems with the English NHS. What is going wrong? What has gone wrong? What needs to be fixed?
Yeah, thanks, Shaun. So I won't, spend the next 2 hours doing that because that would be boring for everybody. But also, you can read a lot in the Darcy investigation, which is a very good set of data and analytics. I'd say two things. First of all, not everything's gone wrong, so I'm not quite sure it is 77-year-old lady falling apart. I might say, I can't think of a clever analogy, but there's still some absolutely fantastic things, and we shouldn't forget that. There's some real benefits of having a single system, a single payer, free at the point of need, those characteristics. But also there's some absolutely fantastic and amazing science happening. Some of the use of robotics, of new technologies, new approaches, genomics. UK is very much at the forefront of the genomic revolution, and indeed many digital products. So there are lots of very good things. The pieces that I would say are the biggest challenges and that are not working, to be blunt. First of all, we have not managed in much of the country to modernise primary care. So we've gone from the NHS really being at the forefront, being very proud of the model of general practice, to really, I'd say, being now maybe in the middle of the pack compared to other countries. So, and that is best sort of described by, we now spend well over 55% of the total healthcare budget on hospitals. And that is an outlier compared to the countries that we would aspire to be more like. So that is a major problem. And so that best seen by many 77-year-old ladies do end up being admitted to hospital when they probably didn't need to be. We've still got people with diabetes not being managed as well as they could be, having complications, those sorts of things. So that's one. The second is that the tech, the IT, more crudely, is not working anything like as well as it should be. We've got all sorts of problems. People can't sign onto their laptops. They can't access information as well as they ought to be able to. This is not a modern day service. And that is a significant challenge. It's wasting a lot of frontline clinicians' time, and it's deeply frustrating for those staff. The third is the NHS is not necessarily a very good employer. Some of the working conditions are not great. There's a number of people who go to work, can't get a cup of tea, can't get a cup of coffee, can't even get a glass of water. That's not great. That's not how we should treat our employees. We don't have good appraisal systems. We don't link people's performance to a development plan, those sorts of basic good employer aspirations. So I would point to that. And then the final one, which is a really important one, is over the last 10 years, we have lost financial discipline. And so we have a number of providers who are running deficits, don't necessarily know why they're running deficits. We can't fully account for the costs of care, and we certainly don't know what care should cost, and we don't always know what it does cost. So those are the main things that I would point to.
So just a few minor things.
Just a few minor things
to fix.
Yeah.
So one of the solutions, we've got for people who aren't familiar, we've got a new UK government. The Labour Party are in power now in the UK, and they are about to launch a 10-year plan for the NHS. So can you give us a little insight into what is the solutions to all of these things? What is the agenda that you're going to follow in NHS England before you're abolished, by the way?
Before I'm abolished, yes. Well, given we've got a global audience here, I think what is good is that the things that we are planning to do, in fact already are doing, and will be covered in more detail in the 10-year plan, are very analogous to what other countries are doing. So we very much have looked at the rest of the world. We've said, what are other people doing? What seems to be working? What seems to be having impact? And then really sought to draw on that to essentially say we should be doing this in the NHS in England. So the Secretary of State has been very clear for quite a while, really, even since when he was in opposition, talking about the 3 shifts. And so inevitably the 3 shifts are a big part of what the 10-year plan will focus on. And the 3 shifts are, first of all, prevention. So we need to get more upstream. We need to look at things like obesity, make sure that we tackle obesity early so that people don't get diabetes and all the other various preventative things. The second shift is shift left. So really try and address that issue that I spoke about before, have way better care available outside of hospital, so primary care, community care, mental health care, social care, working with many voluntary sector charitable organisations. That is a really big one. And then the third is about analog to digital, and unashamedly so. So those are the sort of big planks, but there is also a focus on innovation and how do we really look forward? How do we start to imagine what healthcare could look like in 5 years, in 10 years' time, and make sure that we position ourselves in the best way to capture the benefits of that? And then there's a whole load of stuff that'll be a bit more boring for people, unless you're a sort of healthcare geek, on the wiring, which is how do we regain that financial discipline and control? And I should say that underpinning all of that is a very strong focus on quality of care. So really saying, for all of those 3 for the first 2 of the 3 shifts, those are all about improving quality. They're all about focusing on improving life expectancy, improving quality, particularly for the big killers, so diabetes, heart disease, cancer, mental health increasingly as a cause of morbidity. We get really big on quality for those, but also, I think, critically recognizing the fundamental importance of technology in improving quality. And for me, that's been a big missing piece that people in the quality world haven't really looked at. But the potential for technology to drive significant improvements is massive because, in general, the tech is more accurate than human beings and you can have more consistency. But also because of the data that we capture as a result of the technology allows us then to better plan services and understand where things go well and where things don't go so well.
Oh, it sounds exciting. I'm looking forward to reading the plan. And I'm a health geek, so I'm going to be really interested in the detail. You mentioned the technology there, and I'm really struck walking around this conference, the plethora of offers available. AI is dominating, obviously, but there is physical tech and updates. But one of the consistent messages that I hear from both private providers, companies trying to access into the English NHS, and from people within the service, that it's quite difficult actually to innovate in the NHS, to take those risks. And someone said to me this morning actually that the NHS is a little calcified in its approach to risk. And are you aware of that? Do you agree with it? And are you planning to sort of take a sledgehammer to those problems?
I think if I said I wasn't aware of it, then I might be accused of having been deaf and certainly well more than a 77-year-old lady. So yes, it is a challenge, absolutely, and lots of people here are very, very aware of that. So a few things we do acknowledge it in the plan with some thoughts on it. But if I take a few sort of more generic approaches to it. So first off, we are, which many people have called for, we are seriously thinking about, could we do a better job of procuring some technologies once nationally? So in the same way that we do with drugs, we put drugs through appraisal mechanisms through NICE, we negotiate, we get good prices as a result of that. We negotiate once on behalf of 60 million people. we could do a similar thing with technology, with some of the digital technologies. So we could then have a menu of things that are essentially have been reviewed, have had a negotiated price, and then people locally can use them. So that's something very tangible that we could do. But I think we've got to also really acknowledge it's not just the procurement, which many people do focus on, it's also getting the uptake. And so we, and you know, people from the UK will have heard this said before, we are trying to go through quite a big seismic shift at the moment, which was part of the rationale for abolishing NHS England, which is to devolve decision-making locally. And so one of the things that I'm very keen to do is, what we already started doing with myself and the chief exec, is we are going around different parts of the country, and we're sitting down with chief execs and chairs of hospitals, of community services, increasingly of primary care, and having very open and robust conversations with them about their performance. And what I want to be able to do in those is when they say, oh, we're really stuck, our performance isn't very good, we're struggling with the money, we're struggling with quality, is to say, look, here's all these digital products that you could be using. You know, we've sort of approved them. Here's the menu. Here's the scale of impact that they're having in other places. Why aren't you using them? So I think that's something I personally can do to try and encourage them to adopt them and bring them in. But I think we're going to have to do a lot more on that, because actually just here today, it's been interesting speaking to a number of different people here and saying, where are you working within the NHS in England? And the same names keep coming up. And then I think, well, where are all the other places? You know, the rest of them don't seem to be adopting the digital tools as quickly as I think they could be.
So a bit of challenge to those. A last question for me, and we're running out of time, but I know one aspect of the changes going on at the centre with the abolition of NHS England and the 50% slashing of management costs in integrated care boards, our sort of regional tier. There is some concern that the effect of that will leave the NHS underpowered at that sort of key level. Is that not a real risk to the delivery of the plan and the delivery of the change you want?
Yeah. So we're very conscious of that, and a question came up at our last board meeting actually on that as well. So what we want to do is make sure that we cut out duplication, and we certainly have duplication at the moment. One of the sort of biggest angst that we hear quite consistently is from hospitals, or from particularly from hospitals, but very much also from primary care, is to say there's just multiple people continually coming to inspect what we're doing, and we have got a problem with that. We've got really quite a lot of over-regulation, and so part of this is to say this isn't a good use of anyone's time. We're both taking up management time, doing lots of checking, and we're detracting the providers of care from providing care. So we need to take out some of that excessive bureaucracy and the duplication of roles. We need to be smart about how we deliver some roles. So, you know, digital tools aren't just there for frontline clinical services. They're absolutely there for back office services. They're absolutely there for strategic planning, population health management, utilisation reviews, contracting, and those sorts of things. So we want to get those digital tools in, get smarter about how we do things. But then we've absolutely got to make sure that we have enough people, but crucially people with the right skills and capabilities to be fantastic payer organisations, which is what those integrated care boards have to become. They already are to a degree, but have to become even more so. So we're very conscious that we need to keep an eye on it. Yeah,
you've got a lot to do in a short amount of time. A last question for me, Penny. We're here at Health Europe. You and I are both from England and the English NHS, and we're sometimes accused of being too insular.
Yeah.
I'm really keen to understand, what do you think, from what you've seen, is best done by our neighbours in Europe that perhaps we should be borrowing, and what does the NHS do that's better than anyone else in Europe?
Yeah. So I think we should do way more sharing in healthcare. It struck me for the last 30 years, it is bizarre that you get a new treatment, like a new cancer drug comes along, really good mechanisms for spreading that globally. And yet management practices, somehow we don't seem very good at spreading, and in a way that doesn't happen in other industries. So I think we've got to do a better job of that. So I would look to, I think German payers got an absolutely amazing analytical capabilities. They can do things like vary the tariff, the payment up and down depending on volumes of activity, depending on demand, depending on different providers. We could do things like that. So I'd look at German payers. I would definitely look at some bits of the French system in terms of digitalisation. There's some good examples. The work in all of the Nordic countries on primary care, models of primary care, really developing those, very population health focused. Interesting, the Nordic countries spend a significantly lower proportion of their health budget on hospitals than we do. So I think we've definitely got to look at that. And then, really good examples beyond Europe. So loads that we could all look at and loads we could all share.
What does the NHS do that's best?
What's the NHS do? Yeah, good point. So genomics, definitely, that's SWAN. So I'm told, rightly or wrongly, that we are 5 to 10 years ahead of any other country in terms of developing genomic capability. So we do have quite a lot of lab function. We are now able, increasingly, we're doing genomic profiling on newborns, and we have aspirations to make that far more widespread for people who want to do that. Data is a massive asset. We don't use it as much as we could, but the fact that we have got a single patient single number for everyone, and we will increasingly have a single patient record for everybody, and the ability to interrogate that and use that for longitudinal studies is absolutely fantastic. We've got a long history of science, of innovation more broadly. And then the final one that I would point to unashamedly is that we are very, very strong on evidence base. And that, of course, has a flip side, which I know frustrates people sometimes, because we do tend to say, where's the evidence that this works? And in particular, we mean, where's the evidence that this works on population health? And I think that's something which we should keep hold of, because if you don't do that, then you run the risk of you get sort of blips, and some parts of society end up with more care, better care than other parts. So that evidence base, focused on population health, focused on healthcare value, is a really crucial thing that I would want to keep.
Well, fascinating. I think we could carry on this conversation all afternoon. I'm going to try and do that off stage. But Penny, thanks so much for giving us an update. There's a huge load of challenges to get through with the NHS, but it sounds like there's exciting times ahead. So I hope that was useful to everybody. And thank you very much for letting us join and brag about our NHS.